Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward, the podcast that reveals how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey of creating epic results in your life, business, health, and relationships. Here's your host, best-selling author and motivational speaker, Xander Sprague.
Hello, epic people, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Xander Sprague, and I am so excited to welcome Debbie Weiss on the podcast today. Debbie, tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. And my name is Debbie Weiss. I'm an author and a speaker, and I basically speak from my own experience of being a lifelong family caregiver, something I didn't know I was signing up for 45 years ago. And it's been a journey, and around the age of 50, found myself overwhelmed, unhappy, burnt out, all the things, and kind of had an aha moment, made a decision to make a change, and now at 62, I'm living my best life.
Well, that is awesome. Yes, you definitely have an epic story. So let's delve into that a little. You mentioned that you were inadvertently a lifetime caregiver. What were some of the roles that you were playing there? Who were you taking care of?
So it started when I was 17, and my father, who was days shy of 46, had a massive stroke. Thankfully survived, but he became permanently disabled, and my parents were divorced. And from that age on, I became his primary caregiver for the next 30 years.
Wow.
Yes. And then maybe about 20 years in, I had my oldest son, and he was diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And as parents, we're all caregivers, but I have two kids, and I can say that there is definitely a difference parenting one with special needs. So that became my second caregiving role. And then later on down the line, actually after I turned 50 and had my little aha moment, I became my husband's caregiver, and he suffered from a variety of both physical and mental illness, but out of the blue was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And so for the last 6 months of his life, I was intensely his caregiver as well.
Wow. Did you actually sleep? Because that's three high needs people who need your time. And my Debbie.
Yes.
Well,
Yes. If I was sleeping, I was probably dreaming about what I had to do the next day.
probably. I mean, truly an epic journey, and what I might call the epic unexpected. Those things that happen that change our life that we could never have predicted. So, interested in delving into each one of these. So, with your dad, what was the level of care that he needed? Yeah, I mean, you said he was disabled, but there's obviously a large amount of being disabled, maybe not being able to work, but able to walk around on his own, able to feed himself. You may have make meals, but so what did that look like?
Yeah. So thankfully, eventually, after a year or two, he was able to walk with a four-prong cane. He never
Mhm.
got back the use of one of his arms,
Mhm.
but my mom actually helped us get him into a facility where it was for independent living. So it wasn't like, just like you mentioned, thankfully, he didn't need that type of assistance feeding himself.
Right.
He learned through therapy how to dress himself, even though it was a slow process. And it took years for him to learn how to bathe himself and all the things. But by living in a facility that was for independent living, he had his own apartment, but there was a dining room where he went for 3
Yeah, I
meals a
mean,
day.
there was support around him, but he still had a measure of his own independence and stuff. That's really good.
Yeah, it was. The thing was, having a stroke at such an early age, money had never we weren't didn't have an abundance of money. I would say that we were
That was
maybe
not
middle.
quite on the plan of when you needed, independent living care. Yeah, I
Yes,
get that.
exactly, and back then, let's not forget, he had the stroke in 1981. These facilities were very far and few between.
Yeah,
So, we couldn't find any facility where we lived. I'm originally from Long Island in New York, and we could not find a facility there. So, he wound up being in New Jersey, which mile-wise, it's not a big difference, but if you've ever been to Long Island or New Jersey, what is, 60 miles could take you 3 hours. And thankfully, my aunt, his sister, and her family lived about 15 minutes from where he was. So at least it was comforting knowing that they were there. But at 20 something years old, I had to understand and learn what is Medicare, what is institutional Medicaid, what is Social Security. I mean, what 20-year-old knows these things?
right, no, absolutely. And not to ask too personal question, but he didn't have long-term care insurance because at 46, why would you? You don't have any indication that you're gonna need that anytime soon, so
I'll tell you, I don't even know if long-term care was a product then.
sure, very possibly.
Yeah, he did have private disability. It
That's good.
wasn't a large amount, and he had that, and then he did get Social Security disability. But what wound up happening was, as he got older and things changed, I then had to move him around to different facilities over the years. And at 65, his private disability went away.
Right.
And then that turned into quite a financial challenge.
I'm sure. And then you said that you had a son who's, he's on the spectrum, as a mental health provider. I'm familiar with, that, and again, being a spectrum, there are, different ways to classify. Sometimes we say that someone is, um, high on the spectrum, meaning they're, pretty I mean, at least the way I've heard it, very functional. There may be some social, interactions, but in general, able to take care of themselves, hold a job and stuff. And then as you go, quote, down the spectrum, the amount of care is greater because they're just the ability to understand, take care of themselves, avoid danger, etc. So, for your son, where, if you don't mind my asking,
No, not at
where
all.
was he, kind of falling within that spectrum?
So when he was first diagnosed, he hadn't really spoken yet. So we kind
Mhm.
of didn't know what was going to happen. Quickly, though, I mean, so again, like, time wise, we forget what it was like. He's turning 25 in a few days. 23 years ago, literally, the the developmental pediatrician handed me a brochure.
Yeah,
That was it. Good luck to you.
yeah.
And so, really, that's where, for me, my mindset was I have to make my son be quote unquote typical by the time he's in kindergarten. And I reached out to every kind of therapy. I started spending money we did not have. I remortgaged our house. I had this just feeling that if I didn't do anything and everything that could possibly help, I would always regret it.
Mhm.
I remember used to say to my husband, if we sell our house and we have to live in a one-bedroom apartment, all four of us, because I have a younger son,
Mhm.
all four of us, then it would be worth it to have done whatever we could to help Sam.
Absolutely.
And so that's pretty much what we did. Back then, I had a $6,000 a month bill
Oof.
for his therapy. I brought in therapists were in the house 30 hours a week. I mean, it was intense. And as a parent who has no familiarity with any of this, you're constantly learning, you're constantly stressed, you're dealing with the school district. They want to do one thing, but you're learning that that might not work for my son. So I would say he is absolutely on the high end of the, high functioning.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, he added an ADHD diagnosis when he was 5, depression and anxiety when he was 9.
Yeah.
And they actually took away the ASD diagnosis. Whether he is, whether he's not, it doesn't make a difference because as he got older, his mental illness definitely became much more prevalent and
Right.
more of a factor than anything associated with, autism.
Absolutely.
And he wound up at 20 being involuntarily committed into a mental hospital. And that was probably the worst time of my life. And I've been
I
through a lot.
I can imagine, Debbie. And then for the trifecta of care,
Yeah.
then you had your husband who, as you mentioned in the intro, had some physical and mental challenges, and then he got terminal cancer.
Hmm.
W-
Yeah.
Well, Debbie, wow.
Yes. Wow. Wow, it is. I think honestly, my son's hospitalization was the nail in the coffin, so to speak, for my husband's mental health.
Hmm.
I mean, it shook us both. Like I said, it was an awful thing, and it was during COVID, so we were not allowed to see him, and
Right.
just a lot of stuff happened. So anyhow, yeah. So my husband also suffered with depression and anxiety,
Right.
ADHD as well.
Right.
Something that I really didn't realize until I started to see it in my son, and then I was able to piece together the similarities. I
Funny that
mean,
whole all of a sudden you become familiar with what the symptoms are and go, oh, okay. Huh.
apple doesn't fall far from the tree, let me tell you.
Normally with stuff like that, it really doesn't. So
I was
yeah.
gonna say, actually, since we're just talking about the mental health piece of it,
Hmm.
when the 6 months that my husband from the time he was diagnosed until he passed away, the cancer was the quote unquote easy part.
Right.
He slipped into, understandably, by the way, who
Well,
wouldn't,
sure.
an incredible period of depression and anxiety that eventually led to him being involuntarily committed. So,
Wow.
with cancer, with the whole thing. So, to say that cancer was the easy part seems ridiculous, but it
Right.
was.
Well, okay. So all of that is, as I said, wow. But Debbie, here you are. You've written books. I see them over your shoulder. Congratulations on that. I too have written books and know what a arduous process that is.
For sure.
I don't know about you, but I know the writing was challenging, but I have to say the editing part was perhaps more challenging. And here's a question I ask for the authors I have on. When your book actually came out, how long was it before you actually wanted to look at your own book again? Because at least for me, when I did
Oh,
the editing process, I had read my books at least 6 times all the way through. Well, like any book, if you read it 6 times back to back to back, you're kinda like, "I'm not sure I really wanna I know everything that's in this book, but I'm not sure I actually wanna go into chapter 2 again," you know?
exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more about the editing process. With the first one, which is my memoir, I was just so excited to finish. And it was like, "Oh, I'm done," because I didn't know any better
Uh,
because I had never done this before, I never wanted to do this before,
yeah,
and then, like you said, the editing process comes along. After I don't know about you, but right before it came out, I decided to record it as an audiobook,
yeah,
and I did it myself, and now it's done. There was no changing it. And when you sit down and you read for an extended period of time, you start to notice things that you don't like. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, how many times am I going to say that same phrase? How many times? And I thought, I can't believe this. I can't put this out there. But, you know,
There
I
has
did
to be a
anyway.
good enough. I mean, that's sort of what I discovered was, at some point, you want it to be as good as it can be, but there comes a point where you just have to say, "Here is what I have." And inevitably, even though there was myself and I had proofreaders and stuff, there's always a comma fault, a period missed, a word that we all missed, like 5 people going through it 6, 7 times, and we all miss because we all know what it's supposed to say, and you forget, you just forget,
Yes.
I am, like you're writing I am whatever, but you forgot the am, and so it just goes, I so happy, and then you're like,
Yeah.
how did we all miss that? Well, it's that's part of the on the mental health side. I go, I get it. Like you know what it's supposed to say in your mind. You fill in the word because you wrote it. You've read it like so many times. So yeah, absolutely. So your first book, I believe, is maybe I can't.
On second thought, maybe I can.
I can. Okay, cool. What is that your memoir?
Hmm. That's my memoir. And it is about 30 plus stories of different stories that happened in my life, just kind of taking you through, my childhood and how I developed a lot of my limiting beliefs. And then the middle section where a lot of this stuff that we're talking about happened. And then my aha moment at 50 and what I've done, in the decade since.
Sure. So I love aha moments because they're just it's like all of a sudden this weight is lifted off of you. So here's my where were you when you had that aha moment?
So I call it an aha moment. And I can't, well, maybe I can. I'll tell you, but it's not like, oh, like in the movies or in a cartoon where all of a sudden the character, bubble pops into his head and, eyes open wide. It was kind of a slow aha
Okay.
that, that happened when I turned 50 because for me, something about the number 50 really hit me hard. One, I couldn't believe I was 50. How did 50
I feel
years
you.
just, yeah,
I feel
fly
you.
by? And then thinking, okay, the next 50 are going to go even faster. And I watched my dad had passed away about a year before. And I know that he died with so many regrets. And my mom, who's still alive, also shared a lot of regrets. And I thought, I don't want to be that person at
Absolutely.
the end of their lives, looking back, thinking, oh, why didn't I? Shoulda, coulda, woulda kind of thing. But here was the issue. I didn't have any particular dream, anything that, oh, I always wanted to be an artist or
Mhm.
an author. No, I had nothing. So I didn't know what it was that I was looking for. That was the first part. The second part was that my friends took me away, insisted, because I have very good friends, on taking me away for the weekend to celebrate. And one night at dinner, we were, chatting, and my friend said, well, let's go around the table and talk about our hopes and dreams.
Mhm.
And when they got to me, I didn't have any. I had dreams for my kids, but not for myself.
Right.
And when I got back, I said, okay, something's got to change. I don't know what it is. I don't know where to start since I have no idea where I'm headed. But at that point, I knew that the one glaring thing in my life that was out of control was my health because I've always struggled with my weight from the
Mhm.
second I was born.
Mhm.
And at that point, I think because of how burnt out, exhausted, resentful, all the things I found myself after so many decades of caregiving, I was more than 100 pounds overweight.
Wow. Well, that does happen to caregivers because all of your energy goes to someone else, and you rarely think of yourself.
Exactly. And, when you're younger, and not that it still doesn't apply, but when you're younger, you're really looking at it from a vanity perspective. I want to wear these clothes, I want to look good. But
Hmm.
at 50 with kids, now you start to say to yourself, I want to be around. This is
Yeah.
affecting my health. So what wound up happening was I had lost probably thousands of pounds,
Yeah.
lost
Absolutely.
thousands of pounds,
Lots
right?
of us, you
Yeah,
gain, you lose,
yeah,
all of
we
that.
all know that. So I knew how to do it, but clearly it wasn't working for the long term. So I had to go about it a little differently. And what I wound up doing was I went back to Weight Watchers because for me that I'd been the most successful. And I thought to myself, something's got to change, right? So usually I would approach it as, oh, I have to at least lose 25 pounds in 3 months or by the summer or by my birthday. Otherwise, I'm a failure.
Hmm.
This time, I said, I'm not putting that pressure on myself. The only thing I'm going to do, my only goal when I started was to just show up every single week at a meeting. I didn't
Hmm.
care about what I ate, drinking the water, exercise, none of it. That was it. And every week when I showed up, I was proud of myself because I did what I had set out to accomplish. I probably gained 5 pounds in 3 months, but I still showed up. And once I had that down, then I added another little piece and another little piece. And during that time, I had a mindset shift because I realized this is not on again, off again. This is forever.
Yeah.
And that realization really changed things for me. And so it took about 3.5 years, which in the past, if it had taken that long, I would have definitely given up. Took about 3.5 years to lose 90 pounds. And I have not yet hit the 100-pound mark, which it was about 10 years ago. However, I have maintained that weight loss. And that's the first time that I've ever done that. And so I then took that concept of breaking things down in bite-sized pieces, changing my mindset, seeing, how I'm looking at something, and then I started applying that to different areas of my life.
Absolutely. And it's so funny because you just mentioned two things that I talk about in my book. First of all, that those two very important words, not yet. So powerful, it should absolutely be all of our companions on whatever journey we're on. Why? Because not yet leaves the door open that you're working on it. And kind of, well, I'll jump back. I mean, weight loss, definitely. Not yet has to be your companion. Here is
Mhm.
my goal. Here and not forgetting the fact that you probably along that journey to lose that weight had a heck of a lot more successes than failures. And yet human nature, whatever, is we focus on what we didn't achieve and completely ignore all the good things that we did, right? So, in losing weight, you're like, oh my gosh, I had that cookie. Even though you might have, exercised, drunk your water, and otherwise done everything that you needed to do, yet you just focus on what you didn't do. And I talk about it all the time. I'm sure the people listen to podcasts are like, oh gosh, here he goes about, not yet and the 97-3 rule. But it's really true. Like it we have to like there's so much more good in our day on average than there is that's not good. And yet we want to focus on, that little 3% that didn't go right. But gosh, Debbie, you and I woke up this morning. Not that we doubted we would. That's a really good start. Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, like, here we are. And then you said, and I love this because I talk about it all the time with our epic goals. Put it into bite-sized pieces. I call it my pizza analogy, which is unless you have a teenage boy in the house, we eat pizza one slice at a time. Now, if there's a teenage boy, as you know, you had two of them, any food that's there, if you want it, it is like the Serengeti. You better eat it quickly because it will be gone, right? So you're not enjoying that slice of pizza. You're like trying to get
Shoving
it
it
in
in.
before they just decimate it. Anyway, but yeah, you're right. The only way we can do things is step by step, right? No matter what your journey, like, so for your weight loss journey, you got to take it 1 pound at a time. You can think about the bigger goals, but really, you got to focus on what you're doing today that gets you one step closer to your goal. And I think that's great. Look, writing our books, you know, I guarantee you didn't sit down and just knock the whole thing out in one day.
Yeah, definitely, definitely not. And good days and bad days with that too, right?
Absolutely. Look, there are the days where you really want to get something down, and it's just writer's block. You're just not. I just I don't know. I can't write this thing. And mindset is so important on whatever we do. And look, weight is something that lots of Americans struggle with, and it is a mindset. It is a mindset change of, as you said, this is a lifestyle now. Here is how I need to do it. And
It was also, and I'm sorry to interrupt you,
no,
it was
go.
also a mindset shift in I had that victim mentality.
Hmm.
Why me? Why did this happen to me? Look at her. Look at what she's eating. She's able to eat that. This is what I was thinking to myself. And she doesn't have a weight problem, except I was not thinking, okay, I'm seeing that woman eat the ice cream now. Does that mean that she's eating that every day, all day long? No, I don't know what other habits that she has. Right? And
Right.
so I was so in my own head feeling sorry for myself that this has been, my journey with this, instead of realizing, you know what? Just take responsibility. It is what it is. Don't compare yourself to other people. You don't know. We don't know. We think we always know, especially now with social media, what's going on in everyone's lives. We don't know.
Right. I will. I've said on the podcast before that we look at our neighbor's yard and see the grass is so green, and we're envious of their beautiful lawn. Yet we don't know what's fertilizing their lawn. And I guarantee that your neighbor looks out and may say, "Wow, I really need to go clean up all the dog poop in my yard." Right? Like that woman who's eating the ice cream. You have no idea. Maybe she's mad at herself for having the ice cream. Maybe she's excited because she's rewarding herself. She's achieved some goal. And also along the way are you need to have milestones along the way. When I have lost 25 pounds, I get to go buy some new clothes or something. And I find on any of my epic journeys that makes it more manageable, right? Oh, I have the bigger goal, but I know along the way I want to get here because then I will get to go do this. And that
Uh, I've
so
done that. I did that with my weight loss every 5 pounds.
yeah.
I didn't reward myself with food
No, 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 no,
necessarily,
but there may be
but yeah, with
something,
whatever.
Debbie, maybe there was something that when you were at your heaviest, you couldn't do. And I'll just arbitrarily pick something. Maybe there was an amusement park ride that you were just too big to ride on. But you're like, when I have lost 15 pounds, I will be able to ride this ride that I wanted to ride but couldn't otherwise do. And yeah, I mean, all of that is great. I mean, your journey is so your journeys, because there's not just one, are really so incredibly epic. How can people get a hold of you, Debbie?
I think the best place is to go to my website, which is Weiss.com. You have to put the R in there, otherwise you wind up on a realtor in California. That's not me. And from there, all my information, all the social media, all the things are there.
All the things are there. And from your other book, The Sprinkle Effect, can you just quickly share one or two things that people should know about the sprinkle effect?
Well, I think the sprinkle effect came out of just what we're talking about. It's about how little sprinkles, sprinkling in little things into your life, when you bring them together, can make your life more fulfilling and colorful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Debbie, I want to thank you so much for being on with me. Truly an epic conversation. What a journey.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And I want to remind everyone that if you're ready to begin your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com. And as always, remember, epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Get your gift copy of the award-winning book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward, at epicbegins.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward with your host, Xander Sprague, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed public speaker, and licensed professional clinical counselor. To make your next conference or event epic, send an email to Xander at zander@epicbegins.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, epic choices, epic life.